Greetings, what up, kamikaze soundwaves? Hope everybody's doing alright. For this video, I wanted to talk about my 15 favorite games of all time. Lately, been feeling a little nostalgic for just older games, so I was kind of just reflecting the other day, and I was like, man, if I had to make a list of my favorite games of all time, what would those games be? And I ain't gonna lie to you, it was a bitch trying to come up with this list. There's so many games that I wanted to add on, so many games that I wanted to talk about. I tried to do 10, but 10, I couldn't fit 10, so I went and did 15. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. These are my 15 favorite games of all time. So before I go any further, this is my list, so if your game isn't on my list, well, you know, this is my list. Now, some of these games, maybe I didn't play as much as I did other ones that aren't even on this list. These games are strictly games that meant a lot to me, how they affected me, the time that I had with them, with friends, by myself, or what have you. These are just 15 games that meant a lot to me personally. So let's go ahead and kick it off with number 15. Need for Speed Most Wanted. This is my favorite archaic racing game ever. I have probably played through this game at least a grand total of 5, maybe 6 times. Now, I will say before this Need for Speed game, I played just about every Need for Speed game there was. I probably missed maybe a few in there, but I will say after this one, I have never been able to play a Need for Speed game that was this good. So this is very archaic racing. You literally are in this kooky, corny, Fast and the Furious bullshit type story. But the acting and the hokey stuff that's in it really gives it its charm. But the cool thing about this is that you literally have to race, I think, like 15 or 20 racers, and those are like the bosses as you get up to the last boss, and you can win their pink slip, which you can win their car. I thought that was a great idea. I thought it was very, very cool. And the amount of cars in here is, you know, for the time, was a lot. It was great. And I want to say that I do love cars. I've been into cars for most of my life. I've had, you know, 2 cars that actually I dumped a lot of money into, which I don't own anymore. But, you know, this is very archaic, and I love racing games where I don't have to dive too much into specs like torque and, you know, all this stuff. I just like to mindlessly press the gas pedal, go and have fun. And that's exactly what this is. The racing in it is phenomenal. The story, like I said, is very hokey, but it gives it a lot of charm. The biggest aspect of this is running from the police, which is not as easy as it sounds. It's actually very challenging later on in the game. Trying to evade the police is, holy shit, is it difficult later on in the game. But I gotta say, every aspect of this game, I find it quite awesome. Definitely well deserving the 15th spot in my list. I love this game, and trust me, if you've never played this one, it is hokey, it is a little bit crazy as far as that stuff goes, but trust me, if you like archaic racers and you've never played this one, you've got to give this a try. It is amazing. Number 14 on my spot, Resident Evil 4. Now, you know this was coming. I think this is probably on, if anybody had to make a top 15, this is probably in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and say not a lot of games on my list are survival horror games, but I gotta say that if I had to pick a niche kind of game that I am most attracted to, it's survival horror without a doubt. I love survival horror. I love scary shit. I love scary movies. I just love survival horror games, period. And this is, I guess, not really classified too much as a survival horror. It's kind of more action, but it has very much survival horror elements in it. This is where Resident Evil really tried to jump away and do more of an action, with still trying to do a little bit more survival horror in there. But I gotta say, I have replayed this game. I can't even count how many times. This is actually the only copy that I have of now, is the remastered on Xbox One. But the funnest time that I ever played this game was the port on the actual Nintendo Wii. Using the actual controller that the Wii has, the Wiimote where you point and use the aimer, that just made the game 10 times better. But this game, I mean, all in all, I can't say enough about it. I don't think I really need to say too much about it. This game speaks for itself. Everything about it was fantastic. The action, the survival horror elements, which were very few but still there. Just the whole story in general. It was a whole new thing how Resident Evil was completely reinventing themselves with this game, which left a lot of people questioning things, I think, at first, but their answers were answered very quickly with, they did the right thing here. I gotta say, Resident Evil 4 is, like I said, I don't really need to speak on it too much. It perceives itself, but this is a definite great game, and it's definitely in my top 15. So number 13 is, I actually don't have a physical copy of it. I have it on my Retro Bro. Shout out Retro Bro, but it is Super Mario Kart. Okay, so Super Mario Kart. The reason this game means a lot to me is I didn't have a Super Nintendo growing up. I was more of a Sega Genesis. But my two best friends that I had, it was my very first friends that I had, growing up. They had a Super Nintendo, and they had Mario Kart. I didn't even really know much about Mario Kart. I mean, I knew Mario because I had an NES, but I didn't know much about Mario Kart. I didn't even know the game existed until I went over to their house one day, and we were playing it. And it just became a phenomenon in our neighborhood about playing Mario Kart and who was the best. And I think it's my early days of starting to get competitive into video games. But I will say, I unfortunately was never the one-up, the best player. That goes to my friend. His name is Naaman, which I don't. He was a childhood friend. I haven't spoken to him since I was yay high. But man, he ruled Mario Kart. Man, he was always number one, and he always played with Yoshi. For a long time, I played as Yoshi in Mario Kart because I just thought like maybe he knew something we didn't. Yoshi was just faster, but he would kick our ass up and down all the time. He was the best, man. He was number one. But that it just the friendships that we made from playing that game, getting competitive, staying up all night, spending night at each other's house playing this game, it just holds a lot of memories near and dear to me. So that is why Super Mario Kart is number 13 on my list. So number 12 game on my spot is another game that I unfortunately don't own a copy of, but 007 GoldenEye for Nintendo 64. Oh my god. Now this is another game that totally perceives itself, but this game was a big deal. I moved out of Charlotte for a while when I was younger with my old man, and we lived in a small town, and that's when the game came out. But it was a phenomenon. We all stayed up playing 4-player co-op, and I got good. Like I got really good. Like I played it up and down in practice. I ended up having to come back to Charlotte for if and odd reasons. But anybody who thought that they were the man at this game, I shut them down very quickly. Anybody who thought that they could beat me, I told them to go ahead and pick up your sticks, put them in your book bag, get on my bus, get off of my bus stop, whatever it takes, come to my house, and I'll whoop that ass. I was good at it. I was really good at it. But it was another game that it just meant a lot to me, especially with the friends that I had that I played with it, that I had made when I had to move away for a while. The people that I played with. But I was revered in it, man. It was a big deal for me. I mean, it was great. Then that's another real, story where it kind of gets me into the more competitive side of gaming, where I want to be the best. I want to be number one. And but no, man, GoldenEye, man. Like I said, it's another game that definitely perceives itself. It's a great first-person shooter from back in the day. Kind of started that whole genre. Didn't start it, but it definitely, I think, capitalized on it and made a lot more first-person shooters more household name. But 007, man, great, amazing game. Number 12 for me. Now, going back to survival horror, for number 11, I also had a physical copy of this game. I let someone borrow it, but I actually own 2 copies of it digitally. I think one's on my Xbox. Maybe 3. One's on my Xbox 360, one's on my Xbox One, and I believe I definitely have it on PC, which is Dead Space. Whew, man, I love survival horror, and you can kind of say that this is just Resident Evil 4 in space. I guess that's a fair assessment, but I just remember playing that game and thought it was chilling. The lore about it, it was great, scary, fun fucking time. I played through it probably 3 or 4 times, and I think that's why I have so many copies of it, because I just get so nostalgia for it sometimes, and I'm just like, man, I just really want to play Dead Space. But man, that game is creepy as all hell. Fucking fantastic, fun, scary time. I love Dead Space. Now, Dead Space 2 and 3, those are its own different thing. I mean, Dead Space 2 was much better than 3, but the first Dead Space, man, it gripped me by the balls, and it did not let go. I loved that game. Still love it. Very dear to my heart. But man, I absolutely adored it. It's a little bit higher up on my list than Resident Evil 4 because I'm just a fucking nerd when it comes to space and science and shit like that. So For it to be like Resident Evil and 4 in space, which I guess some people gave it that title, it was perfect for me. Aliens and shit like that, I love that stuff. I love space, I love horror, I love science, I love shit like that. So it was right up my alley. So Dead Space, oh man, if you've never played it, you definitely need to. And if you have, you knew exactly what I'm talking about. Now, number 10 game for me, once again, don't own a physical copy of it, but I do have it digital on my new 3DS. And actually, it's still on right there. Look at that. Zelda Ocarina of Time. Now, I know, people don't really label it as the best Zelda game. There's lots of Zelda games, but that was kind of where I got into Zelda. Now, I played the Zeldas on like NES and never really played a Zelda game on Super Nintendo. I know, call me crazy. So that was really the first one that I dived into, and oh my god, I loved it. That was one of the, like, I think maybe the first game that I ever bought like a strategy guide for, because I could not figure out what in the hell to do, and there was no internet back then. So man, I played that game. It enthralled me. The story, every single aspect of it, it was amazing. I love just riding the horse around in the open field. Even after I completed the game, going back and just doing random stuff, starting it again to go back and try to kill all the spiders that were like, secretly hidden around the town. I spent so many hours with that game, just playing around, finding stuff, doing stuff. There was just so many little things here and there, and once again, it's Zelda, so it's amazing, but that was my first introduction to it to a degree, and I fell in love with it. Now, going forward, as far as Zelda games go, I've tried a few, but that one, I just feel like it's hard to top. Now, that's probably another crazy statement coming from me, but like I said, I haven't tried all the Zelda games. Like, I think I tried, like, Twilight Princess, and I think there was another one before that, and it just did not do it for me. It could have been the circumstances in which I played it under, but I gotta say, Ocarina of Time for me, and the time that I played it and the year that it came out, it really just did a number on me. It really just did something to me, and I absolutely adored it. Okay, number 9, BioShock. Man, I have probably played through this maybe 7 times, maybe 8. Just everything about it. Its atmosphere is definitely the star of the show. It's creepy as all hell in this underwater world where these people try to get away from society and start their own and get addicted to this drug that destroys their body. That's just interesting on its own. The gameplay was crazy, completely different, being injected with these plasmids to be able to do all these, powers, but also in the same realm as a first-person shooter. Absolutely fantastic. The beginning scene where the airplane crashes down and you're like in the ocean and the airplane is sinking down in the water, and then going and finding Rapture, like, that gives me chills to this day, and I don't care how many times I see that opening, it literally gives me chills. It's fucking breathtaking. It's just something about that walking into Rapture and Rapture opening up to you that just gets me every single time. It's just, they nailed it. They absolutely nailed it with that opening. And that also sets the tone for the rest of the game. Creepy as all hell, fucking beautiful, even though the worlds are deteriorated. Absolutely beautiful, gorgeous game. Can't say enough about BioShock. I think that's another one that I think any of these games pretty much perceive themselves, but Jesus, man, BioShock really did something to me the first time I played it. I played all the other ones, and I know Infinite was a big deal for a lot of people, and it also was for me, but I don't think I'll ever recapture that first 10 to 15 opening minutes of BioShock 1. Really got to me. Alright, number 8 on my list. Another game I don't own a physical copy of because it's just absurdly priced on anything you try to buy it on. I do believe I have it digital somewhere or another. I haven't touched it in years. But Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Now, I gotta go ahead and start off and say that I used to be a huge fighting game nerd. I was all about fighting games, SNK, Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, obviously, Tekken to a degree, but I stepped more in the realm of the 2D fighting games. But those were the main ones that I played. Now, I'll tell you my first experience with seeing Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Once again, no internet. I remember walking into an arcade and seeing this huge, gigantic cabinet with actual bar stools at it. And it was beautiful. And I'm like, wait a minute, is this a fighting game is that Jill Valentine? Is that Mega Man? Is that fucking Spider-Man? Is that Wolverine? Is that Storm? Is that Magneto? This is a fighting game? How the fuck do I not know about this? And I was enthralled. Obviously, I tried to play it a few times in the arcade, and I got destroyed. So it came to Dreamcast, so that's when my primary method of playing was the Dreamcast. And oh my god, I bought a joystick for my Dreamcast, and I played, and I played, and I played, and I played, and practiced. And I would go back to the arcade, which is a local mall here, which it's not operational anymore. It got shut down years ago because there was a shooting inside, but it was called Eastland Mall, and there was an arcade inside, and I used to go in there and I used to fucking challenge people. I was good. I wasn't great, wasn't the best, but I thought I was pretty damn good, but I practiced a lot, and I played that game for, I can't even tell you how many hours. But I absolutely adored it. I would play the arcade mode on the hardest setting at least 2 times a day. I'd get home from school, knock it out real quick, maybe play it one more time before bed. On the weekends, I'd play through the arcade probably like maybe 5 or 6 times. I was addicted to the fighting style of that game. Absolutely adored it. So after that, I mean, I kind of died down on the fighting games, but that was around a time where I was just obsessed with fighting games in general. And that game it did something to me, man. All the characters, I'm a huge fan of Marvel, I'm a huge fan of Capcom. I mean, it was like the fucking perfect combination for someone like me. So once again, another game that really, I think that if you even still to this day go back and play with how many characters there are, it's just a blast still to jump into. All right, number 7 on my list. Now, I do own a copy of this game physically for my new 3DS, but I also have it virtually on my Wii, which is Star Fox 64. What can I say about Star Fox 64? I don't know how I got obsessed with this game, but I did. Now, the original Star Fox on Super Nintendo, I played it. My cousin, I watched him beat it, and I thought that was amazing because I thought it was just amazing for people to beat games like that because I thought it was almost impossible. But Star Fox 64, I think I got it for my birthday or something like that, and I just got obsessed with it. I would play through it maybe 3 or 4 times a day. It's a very short story. You can finish it in about a little under an hour, a little over an hour. But I got a gold whatever the gold star or gold thing is on every planet where you have to have so many hit points. I did that all on my copy of a Nintendo 64. And I was obsessed with it, and I played it all the time. I could go through a level and have like the baseline here is just to get gold, and my score would be up here. I played it all the time. And it's at that point it had made me obsessed with Star Fox. And I never went back and played too much of the Super Nintendo. Like I said, I have played it, but I just got obsessed, and I played every Star Fox game after that. And nothing has held true to Star Fox 64. And I hate that Nintendo treats that franchise like it's just some weird thing that doesn't need attention, and I think that they're very mistaken when it comes to that. Star Fox 64, I think, has a huge fan base, and I don't understand why they ignore it, but that's a topic for a different discussion. But Star Fox 64 was a game that I cherished and that I loved, and I could not stop playing that game. Now, I go back and play it on my 3DS every once in a while. I played it on the Wii. Like I have it on my Wii. I go back and play that every once in a while, but it just doesn't have the same magic. It doesn't have the same feel as it did at that time. I don't know what was going on at that time to make me get so addicted to it, but I definitely did. Like I said, I still go back and play it from time to time, but back then, like I said, I was absolutely addicted to it. All right, number 6. Once again, another game that I don't have a physical copy of, but Phantasy Star Online. Now, Phantasy Star Online was a online game that was on the Dreamcast. I think it ended up being like on Xbox at one point or another, or maybe on some other console. I'm not sure where it kind of moved around to. But when it was on Dreamcast, I was absolutely obsessed with that game. I played so many hours of it. I got in so much trouble with my mom playing that game because back then we had to use dial-up for the actual Dreamcast, and I had to have the phone tied up playing it, and oh my god, my mom used to get furious with me, leave the phone off the hook so I wasn't able to play it and all that shit. But oh my god, that was really my first experience with like online gaming and to play together as a team. Like, it was also my first, I guess, experience as an MMO, I guess you would say as well. Also maybe kind of somewhere as an RPG, my first experience. It was like all those first experiences with one game at one time. It just consumed me. And just the memories of playing, like, I remember there used to be this thing where you could like trade with people, and you have to drop your item and run to the different parts and like pick up that item, and like some people would cheat, drop their item and turn around because they're scared that you would steal their item. There was just so much community in the chatting. I actually had a Dreamcast keyboard to chat and stuff like that. I mean, so many feels when I even think about that game. I think it was also the community that really made that game what it was. The chatting with the people, everybody was usually really cool, also very helpful. Obviously some trolls and dicks in there, but what have you. But my memories of it, that I absolutely adored that game. It got me in a lot of trouble, but I will say I'm glad that I got in the trouble that I did for that game. I really wished, I've seen that there was other versions of it that came out for other consoles, and I really wish I would have known about that and jumped on it and played and experienced it again, but apparently at this point in time there is no way to play it online. I've seen some mods for the Dreamcast where you can work around to go back and do that, and I think I would pay probably whatever it would cost to go back and do that again. Phantasy Star Online, if you played that game during that time, you know exactly what I mean with the feels. Number 5, Destiny. But wait, isn't there like 15 different fucking expansions for this game? There's 2 games of it. Which one? Alright, so I would say the whole first game in a whole with all the expansions, but if I had to genuinely be specific, it would be The Taken King. Now, I loved Destiny way before The Taken King, and I played the hell out of it. When The Taken King came out, like, I was officially obsessed. I would play like 3 raids a day, because at that point I believe there was 3 raids, and I would play each raid during the week reset, sometimes more because you could do one with each character. I spent so many hours doing strikes, so many hours playing Crucible, so many hours searching for that next exotic. It was an addiction. I absolutely still to this day love Destiny 1. Destiny 2, I still got love for it. It's just not the same experience as it was, but I still continue to play it because I still ultimately love the game and I love the lore. But Destiny, The Taken King, I spent so many hours with that game. I was literally consumed by it, and I can't say really too much more about it. It's just one of those games where it was fantastic to me. It was almost perfect, and it's like games would come out, new games would come out, and I could honestly genuinely care less. I did not care. It was all about Destiny. That slowly started to wash off, and I would start to care a little bit more about, other games that were coming out. But there was a time where it was like, you could almost call me brainwashed by Destiny. Like I had nothing else to do with any other game. It was all Destiny. That's all I ever wanted. But I love that game. I still do. I still cherish it. I still play Destiny 2 pretty regularly from time to time. Definitely not as much as I used to play it. But the Taken King expansion just killed it, man. The acting, the actual story, all the strikes that were introduced. The raid was amazing. The community, I still think in Destiny is really solid. And back then, I mean, it was even great. I mean, people helping each other, doing whatever they can to help them progress. And if they weren't that great, to help carry people. It was great, man. Just a great fun time. And I just, Taken King, man. The Taken King. I don't think Destiny will ever top that. Number 4. It's Overwatch. Yes, it's Overwatch. I know a lot of people know like I'm obsessed with Overwatch, but Overwatch is probably, I know I probably repeated myself several times saying how many hours I put into these games and how many times I played them. Overwatch is probably the game that I put the most hours into ever. I could probably pull it up and count it, and it'd probably blow your mind how many hours I played Overwatch. Now, I have Overwatch also on PC, and I have it on Xbox One. Both of that time has been on Xbox One, but I also still play it on PC because I've been trying to learn how to get good with a mouse and keyboard. I'm doing better, just not my forte. I prefer a controller, but I am trying to learn mouse and keyboard. But oh my god, Overwatch is just an addicting game. I mean, it's just, when I start playing it, I cannot put it down. I love how there's so many characters, and every time you play that character, it's like almost a new way to play the game. I'm simply, without a doubt, I'm obsessed with Overwatch. The characters, I mean, just this game, the gameplay, the style, everything about it has, I mean, just pushing it. I mean, don't get me wrong, Overwatch infuriates me to sometimes playing with other people, but I truly became addicted and still am addicted to that game. And the funny story about that is I saw this game Overwatch and I was like, what the hell is Overwatch? That has nothing to do with me. I'm definitely a game I'm gonna pass over. Buddy of mine hit me up, he's like, dude, you gotta get this game. He's like, you never played a Blizzard game before? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. He was like, well, you need to fucking play one, and this is the one you need to play. Funny enough story, he got me into it and he quit playing it, but I'm glad he got me into it. I'm glad he taught me into playing it because I literally became obsessed with it. First person shooter, team based action, that's all there is. They do introduce like some story modes here and there, and I really hate that they don't keep those on for longer. But Overwatch, man, what else can I say? It's one game of the year that it came out. It gets award after award. They do regular updates, and there's no paying for any DLC or anything of that kind. When you buy that game, you get everything that comes with it. Not like a Destiny where you got to pay for the most simplest of expansions, but once again, story for a different day. But Overwatch, I mean, it's, you buy that game, you get everything that they're ever going to improve on. They're going to add to it, and I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. I've always kind of felt like Overwatch was like a first-person shooter that's also resembling chess. Using your right pieces in the right place. You'd have certain characters that can help other characters, and especially they can help that character trump up their positioning wise, also in the chess state of mind. I always feel like it was a chess game when it's like almost like a first person shooter. That's about the best way I can describe it, and I absolutely love it. Now, my third game, don't own a physical of this one, but I do own it digitally on my PC and also on my Xbox 360. Vanquish. Fuck, this game is something epic, man. Third person shooter that resembles a lot like Gears of War with cover based shooting, but you have this robot suit where you can zip all around fighting all these robots and mechs. Very sci-fi, cheesy and corny ass acting, but definitely gives it that charm. Made by Sega, and I gotta say, just everything about it is so fucking awesome. The gameplay is really what sells it. It's completely mind-numbingly fun, just fulfilling to sit there and fight these robots, and sometimes you fight robots that are fucking ginormous. Just everything about it. Now, you also, this suit can not only let you zip around, but do this slow motion like Max Payne time where you can tap, 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 you know, shoot like the enemy, zip around and hit their weak spot in the back. I'm a sucker for shit like that. I think this is one of the very few games that I felt like throwing grenades in a game just felt natural. It's like they would, like, when you're running, like you take it and you just kind of throw it, you know, like in that arc thing. Like, it just felt so natural and right. There's a reason this game is in my top 3. I've played through it at least 10 times. I absolutely adore this fucking game. Now, Vanquish I think is one of those games that's very underrated. Not a lot of people know about it. Not a lot of people have played it. I want to say you probably got one more day left. If you still have an Xbox account and a 360, you can get it for free right now. So tick, tick. But I gotta say, this game literally, I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. Third person cover based shooting with robots where you can go fast with slow motion with corny, cheesy sci-fi action. I'm in heaven. But anyway, Vanquished, it's in my top 3, man, and I've tried to preach about this game several times, and for a reason. It is absolutely mind-numbingly fun. All right, number 2. This was a hard one because my first one and the second one I had to keep switching back and forth on, but I think I had to settle on this one being my second favorite game of all time. Now, when I played this game, I did play it on PS1, and that is Final Fantasy VII. Now, I do own that on my PSP. I also have it on my PC, and I also have it on my PS4. This was kind of my first introduction into a, like, I guess, JRPG turn-based game. And the memories I have of wanting it, I remember just standing outside of a glass case that, like, might have been a Sears or something like that, but I remember just staring up at that game. I just felt like me and that game were connected for some reason. And we were, like, I don't know how to put it, but like that game truly touched me. It was the very first game that I had, like, I think that I played that had such a heavy story in it. And I wasn't used to games like that, where you actually have a protagonist who bites the big one. Spoiler alert. But everything about it, like the villain, the story, there was creepiness to it. There was comedy. The turn-based action was a type of style that I'd never played, but I ended up loving it. And I didn't even know how to play a turn-based game at that time. I just got this game, I just thought it was a guy with a big sword, and I thought it'd be some kind of action game that I was used to. And I don't know how else to explain it to you, but I fell in love with that game. I fell in love with the characters. I fell in love with the story, and I have gone back and played it several times. I love Final Fantasy VII, and I know I'm probably crazy hypocrite for this, but I've never played any of the prior Final Fantasy games. I've tried. I've played the later Final Fantasy games. I didn't play 9, but I tried 8 right after 7 when 8 did happen to come out, and God, 8 did not do it for me, and I think a lot of people. 10 I liked, but I think that's pretty much where I stopped. And I always just, maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like no other Final Fantasy game could ever top 7. Just every single solitary thing about that game touched me. And I absolutely love it. And that's the reason it's a number 2 on my list. Now, before I get to my number 1, there are some honorable mentions that I had a really tough time not putting on this list. I'm not going to speak on them too much, but these are some of the games that just did not cut my 15 list, but I just have to mention them. First one is Super Mario RPG. After I started to understand that I loved turn-based RPGs, Super Mario RPG was the next thing that I really fell in love with. But our Super Mario RPG was definitely a game that I wanted to put on this list, but I just couldn't. Resident Evil, that was a big deal for me. I love survival horror. That's where I started survival horror and fell in love with it. And I fell in love with that franchise, and once again I was a huge Capcom fan, so Resident Evil was a big deal for me, but once again I just could not fit it on this list. Super Mario 64 was also a big thing. I played a lot of that shit, and the speculation about what you would get when you get all 120 stars, working my ass off to get those stars, just to find out that you just fucking talk to Yoshi on the fucking roof. But no, me and my friends were, really obsessed with that game, and I just couldn't put it on this list though. Another big game for me was Sonic Adventure 2. I played a lot of that, and I don't know what it is. I'm a huge Sonic fan, but I think Sonic Adventure 2 is probably my favorite Sonic game of all time, and I absolutely adored it. But once again, I just didn't cut the 15. All right, number 1. Ooh, I'm not gonna do that. Halo. Okay. Fuck. Now I own every single copy of this game that's come out, from this one to the remastered, to fucking the Master Chief Collection, what have you. So let me tell you how I found out about this game. There was a point in time when I was doing construction, and I kind of had just cut out all video games. I had sold everything I had. I kept my Dreamcast and a few collection of games with it, because I just couldn't part my ways with my Dreamcast. But I sold everything I had, and I didn't follow video games. I had no knowledge of what was out. Didn't care. I was too busy. I was working, bills to pay. That was what was important. And I was doing construction at the time, and I walked in the morning to get ready with the boss man and all this shit at his house, and there is his son just sitting there playing Halo, and I was just like, what is this shit? I stood there like, alien sci-fi, and he's shooting these fucking aliens and stuff. I was like, this looks fucking incredible. So the second or third paycheck I had of that job, I went to a pawn shop. I picked up an Xbox. They had a copy of the game, and I went home, and it's just history from there. I fell in love with the Halo lore, the story. I probably spent way more hours on Halo 2 than I did that game because of the multiplayer, because there was no multiplayer with that one. But that story, I went back and played it every bit of like 15 or 20 times. I was obsessed with the story. As soon as the credits rolled, I just started right back. I did not care. I've played through it for every iteration that's come out of it, as far as the upgrades and the Master Chief Collection and what have you. I don't know how many hours I've sunken into that game, but it's a lot. That game is definitely, it was hard for me to put it at number 1. I fought with myself, but it's definitely the game that I think that really got me into first-person shooters. And I've always loved first-person shooters, don't get me wrong. I think GoldenEye was, but that was the game that it was the total perfect game that I ever wanted. Shooting aliens with this lore of these like ancient aliens making this technology. It was my dream game. It was perfect, and I still think that it's perfect. And I don't think that Halo could really ever top that. Now, some people may say 2 or 3 is better, but I gotta say that Halo Combat Evolved is my favorite game of all time. And that could change on certain days on how I feel. If I go back and play Final Fantasy VII, I'm like, nah, this is my favorite game of all time. But Halo Combat Evolved, another game that I probably repeated myself I don't know how many times in this, but it perceives itself. There's no really much I can elaborate on it that hasn't been said already, but that was a game that really touched me, a game that really I can't put into words how it made me feel and how much I love it. So that's my number one game of all time. So this is Kamikaze Soundwaves. Hope you enjoyed my top 15 list and me rambling on about my games that I love from my past. There's a lot of games. It was really hard for me to make this list, like I said. So many games out there that are fantastic and amazing, but I gotta say these are the top 15 games that really did something to me, that inspired me, that touched me, the time, with friends, alone, what have you. But anyway, hope you all enjoyed this video. Much obliged for watching, and checking out the next one. Later.